Probably the most asked question I get is, should I file bankruptcy? My grandfather, I guess, lost hope in his life.
They would have borrowed $1,000. If say they paid nothing, they would have paid $7,000 in interest on that $1,000.
Yeah.
How's that legal? Hey everybody, welcome back to the One Day at a Time podcast. Today's guest is Janice from Gamfin. Janice, thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rob. I'm grateful to be here.
I appreciate you taking the time. So who are you and what is Gamfin?
Yeah, so I'm Janice Pierce. I've been in financial services for over a decade now, and started in risk management and then moved to portfolio management, investment management, and then certified financial planner, finished that. And then around 2019, I decided to start my own company. And from there, really focus on financial care, financial wellness, and financial education. I feel like there was a lot of foundational things that needed to be talked about in the world of finance. So I do some work with Gamfin. And as you asked, what is Gamfin? What do? We collaborate with mental health professionals for people who are in gambling recovery. So on our side, I'm a financial counselor. We have a whole team that are of financial counselors that work with people on the finance side. So if you're, working on paying down debt, want to get a great spending plan put together, improve your credit, anything like that in the umbrella of a recovery program with gambling, that's what we do.
That's awesome. When it comes to gambling, a lot of times, like the biggest question people ask is, how can I stop? I'm in so much debt. And I want to get to that question later on because I think that's probably what most of the audience clicked on this video to find out. In your past, do you have any personal connection to problem gambling?
Yeah, and I didn't really put the connections together until I started working with Gamfin, actually, which is kind of interesting to me. So in a way, this is also my own journey, through my life. So as I started working with Gamfin, had a lot of conversations with my mom. Through those conversations, realized that I knew that I came from a family of addiction. I'm one generation removed. And so my parents took the stance of kind of the other direction, the really hardcore, nothing in the house, right? No alcohol in the house, no gambling in the house, nothing that could lead to an addiction at all, because they both come from families of alcohol addiction and gambling addiction. And so from my upbringing, kind of being that really strict religious house, I didn't really understand what they had been through. As I'm having this conversation with my mom, she's like, well, yeah, you realize my father had a gambling addiction. And I said, well, tell me more about that. Because I knew that when I was a teenager, my grandfather, I guess, lost hope in his life and took his own life.
Wow.
And so in that, I didn't really realize how connected it was to gambling. But I do remember, because he was a business owner, he owned bars his whole career. And I even remember as like a 7-8-year-old kid, we'd sit at the bar and play the slot machine. He would give us, quarters or dimes or whatever it took. And we would, didn't mean that anything to us at that time. But he also taught us how to play poker, and he, taught us these things as kids, which mortified our parents. And now looking back, I see why. They understood how addiction can transfer from generation to generation. And I didn't as a kid. Having that impact as a teenager with my grandfather, I think, set me on the course in a lot of ways that I didn't realize until today.
It's really interesting to see like how that impacted your parents in a way that was like the opposite of how it could have impacted them. It could have made them more prone to following in the same footsteps of becoming addicted to something, but instead they took it the very opposite direction. Back to kind of now questions that might come from your clients. When someone stops gambling, they might be in kind of crisis mode. They might be facing a debt that they now don't think that they can gamble their way out of. Do you notice common themes when people come in for their first conversation with you?
I do. Probably the most asked question I get is, should I file bankruptcy? Mm-hmm. And I always talk to people about our financial counseling process, which starts with gathering a lot of information. And so in a first meeting, we haven't set a plan yet, so we don't know what those options are. We take a neutral stance on gambling at Gamfin, maybe a little more neutral than, say, Gamblers Anonymous does. But we feel that each individual has an individualized solution, and that's the strategy that we take.
Do you think that the clients that you see have lost their value of money as a result of their gambling?
I do see that a lot, but I also see that in the other work I do, there's a general disconnect from money. So part of what we talk about is creating a healthier relationship with money, whether that's, on the recovery journey where you've stopped gambling and now we can look at other aspects of your finances, to further down the road where maybe a gambling isn't quite as intrusive in your thoughts as it used to be. But now what do we do with maybe extra income that's coming in, a tax refund or an inheritance, or, how do we take that money then and put it towards some goals that you want? And so that's where I think we can talk about connecting your money more towards what are meaningful goals for you in your life. At the beginning, it might be, my goal is to not gamble and pay my bills every month, not spend that money on a bet. Yeah. But on the road, it could be a morph or change into other goals.
Like this healthier relationship to money that you're describing, it's something that I think I still struggle with 2 years into my recovery. I think that it's kind of motivated from this idea of fear, kind of a scarcity mindset of like, for so long, there was this desperate need to get more money to keep gambling. But now that I'm not gambling, I don't necessarily have to quickly accumulate money to continue life, right? Like I can earn at a normal pace and it's okay. How do I get over that mindset
of having the influx of money right away?
I feel like I need to have it now or else there will be a problem, because for a very long time there was.
And I think that's fairly common. So part of what we do is talking about how to separate your money from your identity. Because I think we take on our feelings of confidence or insecurity based on our bank account. It's not accurate, because money really is the tool that gets us to those places that we want to be. So either having a large amount of money or a scarcity can lead to those gambling triggers. So what we try to do is separate the emotion from the money. How you feel about your money is not the same as what your money is doing for you on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis.
That's awesome. So you will basically work with clients then to automate where their money is going so that they don't have to deal with these thoughts?
Yep. So we create a framework based kind of like on a percentage spending plan or a bucket plan. We create the strategy for their money before they go into the month. And then they know exactly where their money is going. It kind of takes out all of that uncertainty from finances.
That's awesome. Do your clients lie to you a lot?
I don't know. I don't know if I phrase it that way. I phrase it more of an ongoing discovery process where, sure. Because the first meeting, most of the time people aren't going to disclose everything. They just met me. They don't know who I am, right? They don't know if they can trust me yet. But as we get further on, then we start to uncover some things like, oh, here's another credit card we didn't know about. Here's another loan we didn't know about. We need to put this in the plan. And so what I try to describe to people is the more forthcoming they are, the better plan I can create for them. If Perfect. There's surprises down the road, I have to go back and redo the plan, and then we kind of have to start over. Yeah. So, but the other thing it does uncover, and I find this sometimes with couples or with parents who are helping their adult children, is that it uncovers a recurrence of gambling. Mm-hmm. So if we do a discovery process and we find we have all the debt, we create the plan and they start down the road of the plan and something else crops up, that usually is an indication of recurrence.
That adds up. Yeah. The reason that I said it like that is because I lied when I first quit. And the reason was, like, if you are 100% honest and you make the plan that is accurate, as you just said, it kind of exposes you for anything else that you do in the future. But also it's like really taking that leap to recovery. If I'm honest with you, now I kind of have to follow through on recovering. Yeah. Whereas if I hold that back, I can probably go a little on the side. Do you feel like when clients come in to work with you that they're really wanting to stop?
It really depends. It's a case by case basis. We have some clients who have reached the end. They're like, this is it. I've gone the rounds. I've tried everything. I'm really done. And they're doing all of the things that, putting all the pieces in place to make that happen. That could be seeing a mental health counselor as on an ongoing basis, joining a recovery group, GA or Smart Recovery or a faith-based one. And they have some sort of support, either family, friend, or somebody who's helping them with their money. And so for those people, I find that when we put a plan together, they're ready. to do it. There are some other people who maybe their spouse has just found out, or their partner, and so they're kind of pushing them into this, and they may not be as ready.
Sure. What does money mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Raised very middle class, right? My dad was a coal miner, actually. My mom was an administrative professional, secretary, they used to call them. Also business owners, like I'm a fourth generation small business owner. There was always kind of a scarcity mindset growing up. My family lived paycheck to paycheck. We, bought our clothes at the thrift store before it was popular. So kind of taking all of those things that happened in my life as an adult, I kind of veered more the other direction into security with money. Like I wanted, not take risks, stack up money, because I saw some of the things that happened in my family. So I've also had to create a healthier relationship with money. I think this is a journey for everybody to come to the point, like I'm saying, money is a tool. It's separate from our identity. Whatever, car I drive, house I live in, clothes I buy, whatever is not me.
I had an inkling you would say something towards a more conservative answer on your relationship to money, seeing it as safety, seeing it as like stability. I struggle to get there mentally because I viewed money for so long as fuel. Money was fuel, but also kind of akin to like a progress bar in a video game. Like if I was winning money, it was showing that I was good at what I was doing. I wonder how many people watching will fall into that category. And do you think that's the divide between problem gamblers and people who aren't? Is the perception of what the money means?
I think that's partially true. You and I have maybe talked about this before, but how gambling affects your brain and the chemicals in your brain and all that. So there's that whole piece of it. On the financial side, yes, I think that again, it goes back to how money impacts your identity, if it does or not. In our society, especially, we do view it as a progress bar. Yeah. The more money you have in your bank account, or the more you win, or the more whatever, you're better than the person next to you, which is a fallacy, really. But how do we unwind that for ourselves to understand what really is meaningful to me, or to yourself? And that's kind of the discovery I think that people have to go through.
Yeah. How do you measure success if it's not by money?
Right. I mean, and that's a great question. I think everybody has to ask that. But maybe you have some insight on the other side in recovery. Like, how is success different to you now than it was then? What are the measuring sticks you use today?
It's still a struggle for me, I think. And looking at how I view success or progress, it's still really distorted. I could, and I have been recording podcasts all day, and I could sit here and I could make 10 of them. And most people would say that's a very productive day. You've created 10 pieces of content. But to me, I'll always be like, why didn't I make 11? So I'm so used to it never being enough, no matter what I do, that I still struggle to find that path. Now, it's shifted away from money being the measurement to kind of productive output being my measurement. But I'm still sick. I still need to work on that. I still need to improve. And so I ask that kind of almost selfishly, how do I find satisfaction in my life if I'm not measuring it by something that's a number?
I think it's something to really be aware of, because we do find that people who find or discover a healthier relationship with money and are in recovery do turn to other things. And so it's good to be aware of that. I have some clients who start shopping a lot. I have clients who work a lot, and it's kind of the same thing, but it comes out in different ways.
Do you have children yourself?
I do. Yep.
What approach do you take now as someone who's kind of been raised on one end of the spectrum, but now working with people on the other end? What do you think? What kind of conversations do you have with your kids about gambling?
It has changed a little bit since I started working with Gamfin, because I hadn't put as much weight on it before, talking to them about gambling. And I live in a state where gambling is pretty regulated. And so it's not like some of my clients I work with talk about how it impacts them every single day, right? They can't go out of their house without driving by a place, or driving by a casino or something like that. Now, of course, with online gambling, a lot of that's changing. And so the conversation I have with my kids, who are adults now, is the gaming effect and how that can translate into gambling. We're seeing that more and more, especially with younger kids, and in the games that they play, how it's starting to lead them down the road of gambling or make it normalized for them. And so that's kind of what I talk to my kids about who have younger kids.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And when you say the gaming aspects, is it that like you're seeing a trend where video games are now resembling casino games?
Yeah, where you can play to win inside the game, play to win skins, play to win new action figures or whatever in that. Or even the fact that like Dave and Buster's has implemented basically gambling, right? Where you can bet with your friends on who's going to win something. And, my kids go to those places. So it's an important conversation to have with them.
100%. Janice, if I am just getting into recovery, what's the first step in setting money goals? How do I get my life back on track financially in recovery so that I can rebuild those other aspects of my life?
And that's a great question. It's could be slightly different for different people, but some general ways to start. And I would recommend probably having somebody do this with you, a trusted person who's helping you along this path, is to find out, really look at the numbers. That could be the hardest thing. Finding out how much debt you actually have. How much are you actually paying interest on these debts? What are your interest rates? And what are your minimum payments? How much do you need to pay every month to keep the debt current? That's kind of step one. Then step two would be looking at cash flow every month. How much money is coming in? What are those expenses based on? Food, shelter, clothing? We look at those first, right? You got to keep your life going. Then how much do we have to put towards the debt?
Do you guys have budget templates that you share with clients?
We do. I always ask my clients, people fall in three categories: paper, pencil, spreadsheet, or app. And so we have tools for all of those, depending on what type of person you are.
Yeah, if you want any of those templates, go and check out the description of this video. Gamfin's provided them for free. How do finances play a role in actually recovering from a gambling problem? How does getting your money right help you to begin actually getting better?
Yeah, and that's a bit of a chicken and egg question, I think, or continuum, however you want to say that. Some of our clients come to us and think they have a financial problem. And if the finances can be fixed, then everything's going to be fine. Well, we know that that's not true, that it's a gambling problem, not a financial problem. Finances are the symptom of the problem, but they also can be a good way to start into a recovery process. So if we're looking at the finances, I always suggest to my clients that they also bolster their life in the other ways. Some mental health counseling, a community that can help support and encourage them, and then also people closer to them, whether that's partner, spouse, friend, a relative, whoever that is.
So let's pretend that I am a 21-year-old college student who just graduated. I have a really significant amount of student debt that I'm just now going to have to look at for the first time. I've been gambling for months, and at this point, I view gambling as a way to make money. Talk me out of using gambling as the means to pay off my student debt.
Gambling is not a zero-sum game even, or even a moneymaker. I mean, we could go down that whole path. But from my perspective, more what I would say is the practicality. Let's look at how much have you spent gambling and how much have you won? And so it then turns into more of netting wins and losses against each other and seeing, kind of like we do with stocks, right? Because some of my clients also are investors. And so we want to look at what is your cost basis? How much have you spent? How much have you earned? And then what is the tax liability on that? And I haven't had a client yet when we've done that who has come out ahead, who's positive. So then I can just point to them and say, okay, what are some more efficient ways we can use for you to make money? Because obviously this isn't working and has a high degree of risk, right? If you really want to pay off your student loans and your student loans are $600 a month or $800 a month, can you really count on these wins to be able to pay that? And I can show them historically that it doesn't happen.
Are you able to still use examples of past clients without their names to kind of talk through examples with new clients?
We do. And a lot of times I'll aggregate clients. So, we're talking about a situation and I'll pull from different client experiences that we've had and kind of put them all together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because in that case, the pushback that I was going to give you would be, okay, I've been gambling for 8 months and I've won 6 months out of the 8 months. Why should I not be doing it? Because I'm doing really good. I'm a great gambler.
If you could see that that's sustainable, but we can look over, again, historically, kind of the same thing as investing in the stock market. The two ways to win in the stock market are choose the right investment to begin with, but the other half of it is knowing when to sell it. If you've gambled and you've done that, I would consider that beginner's luck. If you continue, luck will not continue. I mean, we have a lot of data that shows that over gambling, right? So the best way to win is to take your winnings off the table and pay them on your student loans, which you know are at whatever percentage rate they are. So not only did you win gambling for the last 8 months, but you're also winning by paying off your 6% loan.
Oh, but 6%, that's nothing compared to 600%. Why would I do that?
Right.
We don't have to go down that.
And I mean, between you and me, like somebody who's at that point, we both know you're probably not going to talk them out of it logically anyway. Right. It's just giving them thought so that when they do get to that point in 6 or 8 more months, when they're not winning, they might remember that conversation.
For someone who's just looking to make those first steps into being more financially responsible, say they've decided to self-exclude from the casinos and now they're looking to pay down their debts. There's 2 methods that I've heard of in the past. There's the Snowball method and the Avalanche method for paying down debts. What are those and which should I do?
Yeah, so Snowball method is paying your smallest balance first, no matter what interest rate it's at. The Avalanche method is paying the highest interest rate first, no matter what the balance is. If we pencil them both out, the Avalanche method mathematically gets you there a little bit faster, but in my experience, it's like months difference. So the Snowball method, to me, is superior because you start to have success faster. You know, pay off a small credit card and close it. Then you go to the next one and you close it, and then you go to the next one. So it gives you this momentum early on that keeps you going. Another strategy we kind of put together is a step method where it's a snowball, but there might be some exceptions to that. So let's say that somebody has small credit cards, but then they have this title loan or payday loan that they need to pay off that's at exorbitant interest rates, right? Then we may put that either at the top or, you know, pay it off first, even though it doesn't quite fit in our snowball method, or it might come somewhere at the very top.
What are some of like the most predatory debts that you've seen your clients come in with?
I think the highest I've seen is 700%.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What was the principal on that?
$1,000, $1,000 to $1,200.
So that's 700% on the year. So if it took them a year, they would have borrowed $1,000. If say they paid nothing, they would have paid $7,000 in interest on that $1,000.
Yeah.
How's that legal?
That's a conversation I wish lawmakers would have, honestly, because there are usury laws in some state. Well, then a company just moves to a state that doesn't have them. And so one company or one state in their documentation says that it has to be reasonable, but they don't define reasonable. It's basically whatever the company can get away with charging is the end result of that.
Jeez, that's insane. When you're going through their debts, do you find that a lot of them have debts to family and friends?
You know, it's not as high as I thought it would be, actually, but there are some.
I imagine that those are difficult to coach through. Well, would you pay those back first because of like the relationship building aspects, or would you go through with the Snowball method or Avalanche method first?
That depends. Some clients want those first because of the relationship and trust building factor. And I like to create a plan that people buy into. Plan, no matter how beautiful it is, if someone's not going to do it, is useless. And so I take all of those things into account. Some people are like, no, my sister said I could pay her back whenever. So we might table that one and put it further down. Or a client that says, no, this one, even though it's 0% interest, right? Their family member's not charging them. They want to pay it back first. And so we kind of put that in the plan and say, does it make sense to do this? Can we do this, payments wise or another way?
Sure. What's the worst thing that someone can do financially after they stop gambling? And what's the best thing that someone could do?
The worst thing in my experience that someone can do is file bankruptcy with no support or guidance on it. And I'm not talking about guidance from a bankruptcy attorney. I'm talking about guidance from a financial counselor who's well-versed in gambling recovery.
Yeah, why is that?
Bankruptcy, I call it the nuclear option for your finances because it eliminates all of the future choices that we might be able to make to pay back debt. let's say that somebody files bankruptcy right after going into recovery or starting recovery, and then has a recurrence of gambling down the road. There can be some heavy negative consequences from that. One of them being that debt then cannot be placed in another bankruptcy. And so then we're looking at finding money from other places in order to pay that debt, which creates more stress and pressure. The other thing though, and bankruptcy is determined by state law, and some states will say if you file a bankruptcy and then you gamble within 90 days, they dismiss the bankruptcy and all the debt goes back to the creditors. So there can be some strict laws around that too. So I think that's the worst thing that somebody could do.
Before we say the best thing, how would that state know if someone was gambling outside of like one of the regulated sports books? Do they have ways of figuring that out? Do they follow people in the first 90 days?
Let's say, because there are two types of bankruptcy, right? A Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13. And the Chapter 13, let's take that one for an example, is regulated by a trustee, because in that one you're paying back debt. So the trustee of the state is looking at your finances periodically. Could be every month, could be every quarter, could be they pull your credit. They look if you've received any bonuses or commissions from work. They're looking at your amount of pay, and they can adjust how much you have to pay back to the trustee. And so they will find out if you've taken on extra debt or if you're spending money in ways that you shouldn't be spending it. They would know if you're not paying your rent and spending it in other ways.
So what's the best thing that someone can do when they first stop gambling to get on the right track financially?
I think the best thing that somebody can do is to know what their numbers are. And that can be a really hard step, but it's very important to understand what the situation actually looks like in order to be able to know what the next step is to start to change it.
And given that this video is sponsored by Gamfin, we should talk about who can use Gamfin, where is it available, and why should someone use it?
If you want to check out Gamfin, go to gamfin.org. Gamfin.org is built as a network for mental health professionals. So they are the ones that can join the platform and do ongoing education. We have a community for them. With that, they can refer their clients to us. If there's someone who wants to talk about finances and is outside of that, you can go to gamfin.org/meet and look through the bios of all of our financial counselors, choose someone that resonates with you and schedule a time with them. Currently, Gamfin is in 17 states. So if you reside within one of those 17 states, then our fees are covered by the state program. And we have some other private clinics that we work with.
And what if someone doesn't live in any of the jurisdictions that it's covered by the state?
Yeah, outside of those 17 states, we do have some private pay options as well for people who are outside of that, but it's always worth having a conversation. Book a meeting with one of our financial counselors and we can step you through what all those options look like.
If you want to see another video about handling debt in gambling recovery, then check out this video and let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.